My guest today is Solomon Khan, founder and CEO of Delivery Layer, which powers web applications and APIs that deliver your internal data to customers and partners. Prior to Delivery Layer, Solomon spent his career in the trenches as a data person, having gone from being a single data person supporting everyone to managing a team of 100 to managing a 100 person data team of a 9-figure data business at Nielsen, arguably the world's most mature data company. So I'd say that, Solomon, you've found founder market fit at the very least, for sure. You're the definition of founder market fit, for sure. Solomon, welcome to the Goats of Growth.
Jay, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited for this podcast.
So I bungled through your intro a little bit there, but why don't you just help us crystallize what I just said? Tell us a little bit about yourself, and most importantly, to start the conversation, what was the impetus for starting Delivery Layer?
Sure. So I fell into data a little over a decade ago when data started to become popular. I started my career in finance. I moved over to technology when sort of the API Web 2.0 stuff started to become very popular. And I was just really excited. I thought that all of the cool things that were going to get built in my lifetime were going to be technology products. And so I wanted to get deeper into technology. And then luckily enough, there was this wave of need in the market where they said, this new field of data, if only you could find someone who knew business and knew statistics and knew programming all in one person, they could become data scientists. And I had studied statistics in school thinking I would never use it again. And then lo and behold, it sort of became central to my career. So I was working at a startup at the time as a programmer. I raised my hand to say, let me start the data team. They said yes. And then over the years, I led data teams and ran data businesses at both startups and big companies. And then for Delivery Layer, I saw a need in the market because I spent, data work can be a lot of different things in a lot of different companies. I personally spent a lot of time on products where data was the product. It was actually the thing that you were selling. You were selling insights and analytics. And what I noticed is that market is not well served by tools for essentially the front end and delivery of that data. Most tools in the data market are built to support internal decision making because that's most of what happens in data. But the minute that you suddenly need to share a dashboard with your customers because you have a market intelligence product, or you need to share something on the supply chain, or if you are an enterprise salesperson with a massive account and that massive account needs analytics into how your product is being used, most companies need to resort to custom software and spend a lot of time and a lot of money to get what I would consider to be straightforward functionality. And that's what Delivery Layer focuses on.
Why did you feel compelled to start it? Was that because nothing exists like this at all, or give me a sense of that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I will probably be more honest than a lot of other startup founders in how I answer it. So I was at a previous job that restructured, and I had taken a very specific role there. And after the restructuring, that role, what I was going to do was going to be very different. So I quit, and I was thinking about what comes next, and I was looking at other data leadership opportunities. And I had this idea for Delivery Layer for a long time. And when I thought to myself, and I also had some family stuff that made it more difficult to start a business. Even if I had the best $1 billion idea, whatever, I was not in a place for a while where I was going to start anything. And thankfully, that was all in a better situation. And I found myself considering various different opportunities for what comes next. And I thought that with Delivery Layer, I was luckily in a position where I had the skills to build it. And I felt like I could figure out how to sell it, which I'm sure we'll talk a lot about in this podcast. And the risk reward to doing that versus going and getting another leadership job, I decided to go and make a go at it.
Very fascinating. I love that. I love hearing origin stories as far as how people took the first step. So let me ask you this. You mentioned so you have the skills to build it. So did you? So you've been building it. You built it yourself.
Well, yeah, one of the cool things about being a data person is that you really span in between technology and business.
Mm-hmm.
And I had previously, because to a certain extent, Delivery Layer is kind of a mashup of a website builder and a BI tool and an API platform with like very sophisticated account management and permissions.
Mm-hmm.
And I had previously built a BI tool, and I had previously done a lot of things that I needed to do in order to build this product. So I had a clear vision for what I needed to build, which is why I bootstrapped it, because I could have spent, a couple of, as you said, I have good founder market fit for this problem. And then I could have spent X many months going and trying to raise money to hire a team to build it, or I could just take that time and build it and go out to the market, because it's a product that there's always revenue behind it. So it's it's not a product that won't make money if someone buys it. So
Mm-hmm.
because your alternative is normally, spending $2 million in 2 years on an engineering team to build what would otherwise take 6 weeks with Delivery Layer, at much less cost. So the biggest challenge that I face is finding people in that situation where they're about to spend the $2 million. And so that is definitely a challenge, but I felt like I knew what to build. And I knew that if I could find people in that situation, that hopefully as I learned sales skills, I would be able to sell it. And that's how I decided to go about it.
How long did you take to build it?
So like any startup product, it's in constant state of like building, continuing to get built. I spent about 4 months before I had built enough to get it to a place where I could demo it and actually offer something real to customers. And one of the things about this domain, as it relates to even how I develop Delivery Layer now, is that there are 100 different things that will eventually need to get done in order to execute the full vision of what I started out. But
Yep.
the order of those 100 things, some of them matter more to different customers than to other customers. So my product development roadmap is very based off of my existing customer base and where they're facing limitations, as well as deals in the pipeline where they're ready to say yes, except they really need this one piece of functionality. As long as that's something that everyone is going to need in the long run, that's how I prioritize. And so after 4 months, I had gotten to a place where I could deliver the core, or 5 months, I could deliver the core thing that customers needed. And I could invest heavily in many different things that I think they're also going to need, but I don't know which one is going to need what. And that's when I started really going out to the market, when I thought I had something sellable.
Oh man, so many questions. Let me just get to tactical for a moment because it always fascinates me. 4 months, but how many hours a day were you heads down focusing on it?
During those 4 months, well, and even now, a lot, like a
Okay.
lot, like I have 2 young kids,
Okay.
so and well, they were a little younger 2 years ago when I started, but it was every moment of my life was accounted for. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Um, who did you first show it to, and what did you learn from that conversation, or even early conversations? Maybe it's not just one person, but multiple. What did you learn from, based on where you thought they were going to sort of be interested in, and maybe that shifted and that changed a little bit, your expectation?
Yeah. So I showed it to I have a reasonable network, or I had a reasonable network, of data leaders and friends that I know in the industry. And so as I built it, I showed it to them to get their feedback.
Hmm.
The the early-ish feedback from them was not particularly helpful, as like it was not as helpful as you might think,
Mm,
because what I said is, hey, there are these companies that need to build these types of applications. They typically spend years and make really large investments for something that I built this tool to go and do much faster. Here's the tool. Let me show you how I built it, and let me show you how delivery layer is much better. And I did that, and they said, oh, wow, yes, that's great. It seems
right.
like you've done exactly what you've said, and it's a lot faster, but I don't
Mm,
have that problem. So I'm not
mm,
going to buy it from you right now. So
mhm,
the feedback was fine. It
mhm,
wasn't bad. I mean, a lot of people also said, wow, I can't believe that you actually built that in just a couple months, which
mm.
was validating for my ego as a programmer, but
Yeah,
it wasn't particularly useful for the business side of it.
yeah.
On the business side, really the only good feedback that I feel like well, there's some people who really know this industry who, even if they don't have a particular opportunity, like this narrow cut of the data world, where even if they don't have a particular opportunity, they've said some really smart things that made me think.
Mhm,
But in general, I would say the best feedback comes from when I am out in the market talking to like people who actually have this need, or when I'm losing or winning deals,
mhm.
and uh, seeing what made the difference, and that to me is like the better feedback.
So talk to me about that. Tell me about your first customer, and actually just walk me through the use case. What challenge did they have, and how did your product solve it?
Yeah, so the first customer that I found was a data company in the healthcare space, and they had a product where they did a whole bunch of data cleansing and analysis, and then they sent that data back to like big healthcare companies. And what they didn't have was any ability for their customers to see the value of what they were doing. So just like they sent data, they got data back, and there was no visibility into what was happening. So
Mhm,
we built a customer facing analytics reporting application that let them show, hey, you sent over 1 million records, and 200,000 of them had issues with them that we were able to correct. Here's a breakdown of the issues and the different data sources. And it sort of justified their existence, because when it was a total black box, when you don't have data, you don't really know what's happening. Whereas when
mhm,
you have clear data to show the value and what's happening, it makes it a whole lot easier to justify that continued partnership. And it was actually amazing as a startup founder, because I'm sure you talk to other founders. I know this is about 0 to 1 growth. It can be brutal in the early days when you're building a brand and building your product and getting a lot of people who don't need what you're doing.
mhm,
But I was on the first like demo beta call where they showed it to their customer, because delivery layer for all intents and purposes doesn't exist. Like
mhm,
nobody who uses delivery layer thinks that they're using delivery layer. It's all white labeled, your own custom domain.
yeah,
So you're just logging into a data application. But I got to
mhm,
sit there, and like the customer was just totally blown away, and they were like, oh my gosh, this like clears up so much that like we didn't even know this was happening. And
wow,
like my customer ended their first call with like a lot more money in the pipeline for expanding their deal. And it was just like such an amazing feeling. um that sort of, you need some of those wins to keep you going from the tough times. So that was the story of my first customer. Interestingly enough, I've got a story of my first like really big prospect that totally crashed and burned, that would also probably be interesting to this audience, which was a company that had built a very large business on top of an embedded BI application in the financial services field, and it was they were really struggling. Like the the pages took a minute each to load, and you can imagine a bunch of hedge fund traders don't like waiting for this type of stuff. They had to have like a separate API team that powered APIs, because you couldn't synchronize the portal application data with the API data. They just had like, they were spending a lot of money, and they didn't. They still had a lot of problems, and it was the kind of problem that like money is it's not even easy to throw money at. You have to throw like a ridiculous amount of money at this, not just a little bit of money at it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just tough. It was like I got on a demo and it was like a classic, like leaders didn't align before the demo. Different people had different things, and it was a tough call. And I put together like a POC before it and spent like weeks doing it, and so it was really tough to not get that one. So yeah,
Let me ask you this.
Yeah, go ahead.
The problems that you were just describing, that was before they met you, or they were trying it, and those are the things that were challenged.
Well, that was what they didn't want to live with anymore.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so tell me more about then why did the meeting go so poorly though?
Oh, it was just like a lot of the when I'm sure every SaaS person learns this and founder learns this. Like you know what they say, it's you use like once upon a time maybe you only sold to one or two people inside an organization, and now you have to sell to 15 people inside a big organization, and all of those 15 people have different priorities and goals and have personally invested their team and their own reputation in the existing solutions. And navigating that is a big learning experience. And there's a lot of pre-work that I could have done that I didn't know I needed to do. And there was so much, and I did a lot. I messed up in a lot of ways in how I navigated the organization. And so it was one of those situations where I felt like it was very clearly my skill set. It wasn't 100%, but call it 75% my skill set that lost it versus the fact that my product wasn't ready to solve this. And it would have been a really, really big deal.
Yeah.
So that was painful.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Let me go back to the win for a moment. How did you get them in the first place? In other words, was it a cold call, cold email? Was it an introduction?
It was an intro from a close friend who so it's sort of like, it's interesting because it's sort of obvious. Oh, I'm close friends with someone who knows these people and knew that they needed something like this. But even then, and this is a lesson for people, I from a marketing perspective, I do a lot of posting on LinkedIn and have grown an audience there. Over the past year, I've gone from like 2,000 to 13,000 people on LinkedIn. And when I talked to him about it, he was like, it's a good thing you post on LinkedIn, because I never would have thought about this unless I was like seeing you all the time on LinkedIn, and it just like triggered in my head. So it was personal connection, but I sort of like personal connection plus some level of hustling and being out in the market, because even with a personal connection, it doesn't just fall into your lap.
I want to ask about the audience building that you just mentioned on LinkedIn, because that's great, and I think people should hear that. But I want to stick with this for a moment. What about, how did you decide to price it? What was the pricing model? How did you sort of think about that?
Yeah, I do t-shirt size pricing for Delivery Layer, and because customer facing application can be anything from, like, for example, when I was we had $100 million business, and we needed a front end for that business, that the expectation was that there was going to be a multi-million-dollar investment. That's like one archetype of a customer facing analytics application. On the opposite side of the spectrum, there is consultant somewhere doing a brand study for Coca-Cola, where they track brand affinity metrics in multiple different countries. And then they right now provide a PowerPoint presentation every quarter to Coca-Cola that says, hey, here's how all of the different countries you had changes in your brand affinity metrics, and here's a lot of data that you can dive into in an Excel. Like maybe that $2 million a year study can be a $2.5 million a year study if it comes with a customer facing dashboard application that they can use to dig into, but the economics of that are far different than the economic, and the user base and everything are far different than the we've got $100 million business and we can sell data on, and we just need to properly package and price and commercialize our data. So that's what. So for me, for delivery layer, I try to price generally like typical software is built with a massive expense up front. So you're hiring developers and spending a long time building out an MVP and an unknown time frame for what and not a lot of clarity on what actually you're going to get and when. So you might have 18 months and you hope you're going to get something because that was your product vision at the beginning. But having been on the other side, both building and on the product side, I can say with confidence that you never get everything that you think you're going to get that 18 months or, after. And so with delivery layer, the way that I've priced it is, so typical software, high upfront cost, and then lower maintenance cost in the future. If you had, a team of devs build something, you might only need 1 or 2 devs to maintain it over time, assuming it's mostly feature complete. So I try to price to the maintenance cost of that type of application. And then because it's software that as long as your use case fits into the bounds of that software, I throw in the build for free because it's a very short period of time. So there's no like extra build cost. If it takes 6 weeks to build the application, you just pay platform fee for that time. The application gets built. It's not risky. And I've done that because I'm a tiny bootstrap startup. And so I want to make it, if you're in this situation, I want to make it easy to say yes. And if you can write a small check that is low risk if it doesn't work out versus need to write a massive check right up front, I think that makes it easier to say yes.
And that service, that maintenance fee that you just described, is that monthly, annual? How does that?
So I do right now. I annualize the price, but invoice monthly.
But
so it's invoice monthly, correct?
Got it. Yep. Got it. Let me go to the audience building for a moment on LinkedIn. Tell me why you decided to use that as a channel, and how have you? Tell me about your process actually for writing on LinkedIn. Is it something where you write every day? Do you take one day and write for 7 days and then publish them ahead of time? Give me a sense of how that works.
Yeah. So I had just come from 2 businesses that were in like touching the sort of influencer space. And at Nielsen Sports, where I owned the P&L, and that was a pretty large business. We were surprisingly the team that was in Nielsen that was the most into a lot of what was going on in the influencer market, because sports players are actually, we did sports sponsorship analysis. And so we would like analyze every second of what brands are on the screen in professional sports. And then the brands and the teams and the leagues would all trade off of that information to help set the value of what sponsorships should be priced at.
Oh, wow.
And if you think about it, sports athletes are essentially the world's largest influencers. I mean, they have these massive social followings. If you look at the top 20, people with social followings, a good percentage of them are going to be sports people. So I was very deeply into that business. And then the next business that I went to is a company called Helium 10, which started off of a podcast essentially, and was very integrated into, they do data intelligence products for the Amazon ecosystem. So people and Walmart. So e-commerce people who are selling, you've got Google has SEO and SEM. Well, so does Amazon. And there's a lot of money behind being ranked high and advertising effectively on Amazon. So Helium 10 supports people in that ecosystem. It's the number 1 product for SMB e-commerce sellers. Okay. And so we also were very into the influencer market. And so I saw the power of building building an audience and having people that sort of were able to see your expertise and use that as a way to trust you. Because to me, it's all about trust. It's not, it's, and I've not been as focused on like juicing the audience numbers. There are a lot of things I could have done to grow my audience faster, but not have it be the right people and not do it in a way that I would feel like proud of all of the things that would represent what I want the company to be. But I think that if someone's like, data infrastructure requires a lot of trust, just point blank period. And so if I wanted someone to trust a super tiny data company, I knew I needed to give people more insight into my background, the way I think, the way I approach data work, how I think about data products, how I think about making money and having business impact with data. And I could do that through LinkedIn in a way that would be tough to do in other places. So that's how I saw the power of it from a business impact side. And I thought specifically for data, I really need to give a way for people to understand more about the way that I approach data and data products.
And talk to me about your process for that, for writing.
So I have a two-step process, I guess. Ideas come whenever. You can't choose when ideas come. I'm sure you've experienced this on the other side as well. And so I have a place where essentially whenever I have an idea, I write down the idea. And sometimes it's just like a one line, or sometimes it's, 2/3 of a post. And then pretty much every day I'll go in and take from all of the ideas that I have, I'll take one that I feel inspired by or a mostly finished post and then finish it up and then post it. I've gone through phases where I've blocked calendar time to do them in bulk, and so I've done the just do it every day. I've done it the in bulk way. I'm sure I could get better at organizing and doing it in bulk, but I haven't. I mostly do it just every day. I go in quick and just polish one up and post it.
So since you're the data guy, have you analyzed your metrics, your data there of your LinkedIn connections, and tell me what they're telling you?
Yeah. So I have analyzed. So LinkedIn gives you some analytics that are absolutely horrific. Absolutely horrific. I love LinkedIn. LinkedIn has a special place in the data world because there are a lot of very important advances in data work that were done at LinkedIn. So and as a user, I love LinkedIn, but their analytics for who your audience is terrible. So I've analyzed my posts a little bit, but I'll say I don't. Whether posts get popular or not, it's something that's not so easy to analyze. And for example, I know that there are certain topics that get more followers and get more engagement than others, like career stuff and talking about interviews and resumes and other things. No surprise, a lot of people are on LinkedIn looking for jobs or during times that they're thinking about career things. So that type of content is always very popular. And like I you said it in the intro, I led a 100-person data team. So there aren't that many people in the industry who have done that. I've got a lot of interesting experiences that I can share to give people context that they generally don't get around hiring and career development for data people. So I definitely take advantage of that piece of my background. And then I've got the data product side of it, which has a far smaller audience of people that are interesting, but is more core to my product at Delivery Layer. And so I sort of intermix it a little bit. I know that those posts aren't going to get as many impressions or aren't going to be as viral, but it's important that I also talk about that kind of stuff.
Of course. So tell me, excuse me, obviously that's a growth strategy, right? In a marketing strategy. Can you tell me how many leads or how many customers came directly from those posts, or have any yet? And because I know it's a long tail thing, much like this podcast, but
yeah, it's long tail. And I think it's about brand building. So everybody who has gotten either anybody who has bought or has gotten close to buying follows and likes my posts. And so I see it more as nurturing versus pure brand building. Most of the work that I spend for business development is more outreach, but it helps a lot with outreach also because I might get, I have now most of the people in my audience are senior data people. And so if I'm doing outreach to someone, if I've been connected with them for 3 months and they've seen all of my posts or they've seen some of my posts and I'm more of a familiar face, they're far likelier to say yes if I send them a note asking to catch up, to talk about if they have any needs around customer facing data products. I'm less of a total stranger. And so I think, CEOs of startups, I think there's this, like, as opposed to a standard SDR or BDR, you get a lot more people who are going to say yes to meeting you in general. And so you get that. And I think it's only emphasized more when you have, when you're already connected to those people and they've seen your posts for a while.
Yeah, for sure. And to me, what you said is, I mean, I think it's hard to separate the two, right? It's kind of like, well, I think it's easier now to separate Belichick and Brady, but the point is that your posts are, to your point, nurturing your audience so that when you're reaching out to them cold, but not really cold, they're going to be more receptive. One of the things I used to do, and frankly, will do continually, is if I write a post that was well received by my audience, I'll actually share that. I'll actually use that in an email and say, like,
that's
hey,
so smart.
Yeah, like, hey, Solomon, I don't know what your opinion on this is, but I just shared this on LinkedIn and it got quite a reaction. Whatever. Let me, you know what I mean. So then you're really adding that, you're building that credibility and trust into it, or social proof, I guess, if you will, right into it, and you already know as an email, like, you already know that the message works, right? because the reaction you just got on LinkedIn, you're like, holy crap, like, this seems to be working, resonates with people. Maybe it'll resonate with my audience a little bit more closely. So, very interesting. Okay, so let me ask you, how do you grow beyond where you are? So, in other words, if you don't mind sharing, how many customers do you have now? And what is the goal for, say, the next, I don't know, you tell me, in terms of period of time?
Yeah. So I prefer not to share the specific number, but the biggest challenge the delivery layer faces for growth is finding people in that very specific moment. And so, and this kind of gets back also to my LinkedIn strategy. If I had a better, well, two things. Number one, when I started with LinkedIn, I thought, all right, it's not always very clear when most organizations need to share data externally at various different points in various different ways. It's not always clear who's responsible for that. Is it a product person? Is it a engineer? Is it a data team leader? Is it a salesperson who says, hey, this reporting capability is in the way of a deal, and if we had this, we could close this really big deal. And or especially in data businesses, a lot of times the salespeople are the one on the cutting edge with customers saying, if we had this type of market intelligence product, this customer would pay us X million dollars for it, or we think this could be, an extra couple $1 million for the year. And so I felt like by going broad, I could be in the market in ways that when people naturally would come across this problem, they'd know that delivery layer exists and is able to solve for it. So that to me is really how when you say, like, how do I grow? I think it's that it's continuing to be out in the market, continuing to do warm and cold outreach to people that are sort of tighter in the ICP. Like, I've narrowed down most of my like focused outreach towards people that specifically have data businesses, because for them, there's always different opportunities to package and position their data to new markets if only they had a product to do it, and Delivery Layer can power that product. So that's really how I think about growing to the next level. Is there's a big world out there. I am not venture funded, and so I can just keep going until I find more and more customers that hit this problem, and that's the plan.
Let me ask you this, because you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, there's a big ocean to boil, if you will, in a lot of different use cases. Have you narrowed it down in terms of, okay, like if I'm going to, especially I guess on the outreach side, right? Are you narrowing it down to say, okay, I'm going to focus on companies of a particular size, or whether that be revenue, employees, product people, could even be, solutions that they're offering, personas internally, as you just mentioned, anything from salespeople to data people to who knows, right? Like, have you on a spreadsheet somewhere, you're like, okay, here is the target, and I'm going to be disciplined and focused on this particular segment?
Yeah. So over time, I've come in a lot on the business type. And I probably have more to come into, like, as you said, because Delivery Layer is a functional tool that can apply to many industries. And so is it the consulting use case that we talked about? I was in conversations with a big telecom company that doesn't have a good customer reporting portal. And by the way, from my conversations in telecom, it seems like no telecom company particularly has a great customer reporting portal in the sort of enterprise telecom world. Everything is terrible. People don't get data well. So, maybe there was a whole business there just doing telecom data reporting applications. For me, where I landed is businesses companies whose business is data. So they are selling insights products, analytics products. They are focused on they've got a data set, and then the success of their company is going to rely on how effectively they're able to commercialize that data set. And I think that that's really where I've taken my focus, from anybody anywhere that needs to sell, get data externally, to the people where there's revenue on the other side of it. And that's where most of my like purposeful outreach is. But I've gotten a couple on LinkedIn who are just, needing to build a customer facing data or a data application for a supply chain partner, for example. And I will say yes to those, but most of my focused work is on data businesses.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, I'm going to bring two things together here, and I didn't intend to do this, but I think that this wasn't premeditated, but I think it makes a lot of sense to sort of talk about this and bring our audience behind the scenes, so to speak. So when I reached out to Solomon, I reached out to him about this podcast, but I also mentioned a marketplace where, if you follow me on LinkedIn, or you know me, or been to the website, or frankly you've listened to this podcast, you might know I'm taking on the Herculean task, as I say, of turning my recruiting firm into a talent marketplace for go-to-market teams, in particular go-to-market leaders for startup companies. And so I reached out to Solomon because I want to meet more startups, particularly earlier stage, where my audience is, can learn, or other founders can learn from other founders about some of the things that they've been through and some of the things they're trying and so forth. And my long bet is that as they build, as Solomon becomes more successful and these other founders become more successful, eventually going to need go-to-market leadership, right? Head of sales and so forth, right? And so when I reached out to him, I said, I also have this marketplace that I'm building. And one of the things he said is that, the world doesn't necessarily need another go-to-market platform. I get plenty of outreach about those. Really what they need are people who they can trust, who can bring them viable candidates for their companies. I'm like categorizing that right, Solomon?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so, and I said, I was like, great, that's something we can talk about when we meet about the podcast. And so I wasn't going to make it part of the episode, but I think it makes sense in this case, because it's funny. I was on Crunchbase for pretty much all day yesterday, right? Trying to figure out how to constrain ways. I have ideas for constraining the marketplace, Solomon, that will answer hopefully your question and challenge about trust and reliability. And in my mind, I'm thinking, if the marketplace can become a trusted source where people can go and actually get what they want, right? Obviously, that builds trust. In the marketplace world, they call that liquidity, where demand finds supply and supply gets found. It's called liquidity. The challenge for my clients has always been, for the 13 years that I've been running my business, and the additional roughly 4 that I started with a company, is finding the most relevant, reliable candidates when they need them in a time efficient way. So we are paid a large part for our time, spending a lot of time actually looking for people on LinkedIn, screening them, and then delivering them to the candidates, to the clients. With this marketplace platform that I'm building, what I envision, and I think what I pitch to you is that, imagine a world where you're looking for someone who has domain expertise, call it data, has sold to personas that you're looking to sell to, whomever that might be, as we just described, right? But they have a knowledge of that, selling into a particular industry, and within companies that have done, call it, less than $5 million in revenue. Because there's a huge difference between a CRO or head of sales at Nielsen and the next head of sales or the first head of sales that you're going to hire at Delivery Layer, right? In terms of
Sure.
stage fit, culture fit, and all that stuff, right? So I've talked to folks like you, and one of the things that came up was the reliability of the data, right? In other words, how do you know that the person, the CRO of, say, XYZ, was actually there as part of the fundraising, particular the round that they raised, right? In other words, were they the
Yeah.
one who actually impacted that sort of growth, going from 5 million to 30 million and then raising a Series B, or was it somebody else? How do you actually keep your data, for all intents and purposes, clean? How do you keep the fact that people who are on the marketplace are available, reliable, and all of those things, right? And so I was looking at Crunchbase yesterday and trying to figure out how to actually constrain my marketplace so that when Solomon Khan or whoever comes in, it's actually they're getting what they're looking for. And one of the things I actually talked to Crunchbase, not just the license where I was just using their data, but I actually talked to them about figuring out a way to integrate their data into my platform, so that when changes do happen, like rounds are raised or leadership changes occur, where someone can come who is a member of the Goats of Growth marketplace can see it without me or my team having to do it manually, right? And so the reason I sort of brought all that up is that I wonder, in this case, is if there's a use case for Delivery Layer where it's like, I need data, customer, and take this data, which is frankly the people right behind the Goats of Growth, right, who have done certain things. And one of the things that I've certainly hit on is that if a CRO was the catalyst, let's say, or played a major part in going from Series A to Series B, that tells maybe a lot. Specifically, if there's a difference between a CRO who raised money in 2020 or 2021 and a CRO who's helping raise money in 2024, right? Because the world has changed since then. It's not as easy. And so to be able to look at all of this, parse all of that data, and figure out in a very, very quick way to say this is a reliable leader. So let me just pause there and say, like, do you see a use case where a Delivery Layer actually helps me in my marketplace situation?
Sure. So I guess there's two sides of it, right? Because Delivery Layer is a product that's built for the sort of data seller, right? So there would be the Crunchbase side of it, where if they were trying to build analytics applications on talent or whatever, like, they might incorporate it and make it very easy for you to pull their data. I guess they have some sort of API from what you said. I don't
Yeah,
know,
they
but
do.
that
Yep.
okay. Um, And then on the opposite side for you, it would be the like a marketplace can mean many things. I don't know to what degree you would need collaboration or other different things in the marketplace. But if you just wanted to have the marketplace be essentially a market exploration tool where you were pulling in data and then people could explore that data, then yes, that's sort of a very straightforward use case for delivery layer. You could have, as long as you had the data, you could avoid hiring a bunch of devs to build a custom application for what is probably basic search and filtering functionality. That said, I still think that the technology side of like coming from the founder's point of view, where at some point I am going to want to go from founder-led sales to having salespeople that I support and then eventually hiring a head of sales. I think that's probably, from what I've seen from other people and in the market, going and directly hiring a sales leader as opposed to hiring some two salespeople at the start. And then once you can find some success there, hiring a leader is probably the path that I would go as the company evolves. And what I need in what I imagine I will need in that situation goes so far beyond what a pure marketplace would tell me. Like that I imagine that whatever you're offering is going to be, it would at a minimum need to be marketplace plus plus plus, where those pluses were more impactful likely than just the fact that you had the data marketplace.
Yeah. So let me just go a step further there. And by the way, you're right. I mean, that's literally how most founders do it, right? In other words, you're running sales, and then you find, BDR, SDRs, let's just say, to help you, frankly, do cold outreach. They hand the leads over to you. Eventually, maybe you promote them into running the full sales cycle, all that stuff, right? And then when there are constraints that occur, bottlenecks, those types of things, and you realize you have something where it's like, okay, I need to get out of the way. Then of course that's when you bring in somebody that can operationalize it and figure it out. And that actually even sometimes can be an ops person, frankly, even before a salesperson, because you want to sort of build that foundation, I guess, if you will, if you are going to scale, right? And so there's definitely conversations to be had around there. But just to go again, because I'm passionate about this, I want to talk about the marketplace a little bit more, which is that what we are doing on the back end, so to speak. So you know how it's kind of like what do they call it, like service enabled software. Like there's a lot of software companies that are ultimately like running, service in the background, but the end user doesn't necessarily notice it, I guess, if you will, right? And so the marketplace is ultimately that, where I'm going to have, as I do now, right, myself, team of recruiters that are doing it, right? Literally like going where and I don't play hockey, but it's like skating where the puck will be, right? In other words, so if I have a spreadsheet right now where it's like, okay, I have AI, ML, low code, no code, cybersecurity, health tech, HR tech, rev tech, right? Like all different kinds of domain. Where I just, frankly, a candidate right now is interviewing for a company that does connected workforce solutions, specifically selling into manufacturers, right? And they're looking for a vice president of sales for that, right? I just closed a health tech search VP of sales as well, right? Very, very specific use cases. The first company I just mentioned is private equity backed, right? So there's all different kinds of things. And what we want to do is seed the marketplace based on where we know Solomon Khan will be 18 months from now, something like that. So when you show up to the marketplace and you're like, oh, okay, like these guys, it's weird. It's almost like they already know me. And you're like, wait a minute, how did they know I was going to be looking for this person, right? And by the way, that search that you just mentioned in terms of the advanced filtering doesn't even take that long, right? Because I will spend hours, like what I just described, those people that that are finalists, hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of my time trying to find out where those people are, as big as my network is. And as long as I've been, doing this, because each case is new, right? It's like it's not like this isn't a product that you pull off the shelves, but the marketplace is the closest thing to that, where it's like, it's a trusted source where people can get, to your point about the plus, plus, plus. It's like, holy crap. Oh my gosh, this is here. And then all you have to do is just sort of do the reach out and say, hey, person looks really interesting. Can I talk to them? Right, that type of thing. So, anyways, again, not a commercial necessarily for the Goats of Growth, although this whole podcast is literally. But you know what I mean. So,
you know what? I think that sounds a lot more like so it's less of a, it's more of a lead magnet for as a marketplace versus the full solution to what a customer needs. Yeah, that sounds that sounds much more interesting.
product, you know how they talk about product-led growth? This is like product-led recruiting, right? It's like, here's the product, where I can tell you we're awesome, but I don't have to tell you we're awesome. Just look at just look at what we have. You'll see that we're awesome, and then we can help you, right? That type of thing. So anyways, okay, cool. Well, thank you for allowing me to indulge that. But again, I think it's relevant to the whole data thing, because I kind of got paralyzed after the person brought up data to me, right? I wasn't thinking about that, like in terms of like the reliability of it all, and it paralyzed me for a couple of weeks. Like, how do I do this? What am I going to do? Like, how do I constrain it? How do I make it better? So anyways, much appreciate that. Mm-hmm.
I'll also say this for your, as you're thinking about building it out, especially on the back end, data pipelines are messy. Your data sources are going to be messy. You're going to get some dirty data. Oh, it says that they raised their A round in January, but actually that was only when they announced it. They raised their round 6 months before, right? And the CRO wasn't around when they actually raised it. They got hired after they raised it. So there's gonna be some things like that where your data is not going to be perfect. And from having launched many data products, the biggest question that matters when you're launching a data product is what happens if something is wrong. And in your case, if something is wrong, you're still going to be doing a lot of work to vet anybody. So it's going to be totally fine. So I would say don't get too distracted by if there are any issues in the data. Like, for example, we had a product that predicted gold medal counts in the Olympics, right? The whole point of that product is that it's going to be wrong. Otherwise, why would you watch the Olympics, right?
It's awesome,
Otherwise, it's not exciting.
Right.
But people still liked it because it's like, oh, we're tracking based on who's gotten what so far and what the expectation is for who's getting what next. This is where, so it was an interesting product. People liked it. A lot of newspapers and media outlets picked it up. But if it went wrong, it's no big deal. So as opposed, and you know, other applications in healthcare or whatever, if it goes wrong, people get in big trouble. And so you have to, so in your case, you should be okay if things are not perfect. So I wouldn't get too distracted as you're building it out about every little corner case of data quality. Your customers will tell you soon enough where the data challenges are, and then you can fix them when they tell you.
Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate hearing that. Definitely. I'm going to ask just one more question regarding delivery layer, then I'll get you out of here on the rapid fire 5. Sound good?
Sure, let's do it.
So what about the future? In other words, we talked about, you haven't raised money. I wonder, you're going to raise money. And if you do raise money, is there a sort of inflection point that you see, or something internally where you're like, this is necessary? I got to go out and raise money, maybe a competitor coming into the space or something like that. And then also, I guess, what is the vision for the future? And I won't even put a number on it. I'll let you, in terms of how far out you're looking at this, goal wise. In other words, do you have a particular goal where you want to get, and you don't have to share a particular number with me, but maybe number of customers, just give me some proxy for where you want to be in the next whatever period of
time. Sure. So that first question of would I raise money, or when would I think about raising money? I am typically companies raise money for 2 reasons. Number one, they need money to build a product, and number 2, they need money for the go-to-market. Because especially in enterprise SaaS, you do it. Some of the sales cycles are 18 months, and it's like, how do you navigate that as a super tiny bootstrap business? It's tough. And so revenue is very peaky around, or new customer growth is peaky, is when you have monthly recurring revenue. It's sort of, it always adds up unless customers churn. So to me, My thought was always, can I get to the next milestone before raising money? And so was I able to build a product? Yes. Was I able to go from 0 to 1 in revenue? Yes. I think I would want to raise money when it's very clear that like I had a process for how that money was able to effectively turn into growth. And then I could trade off, or I could make a decision. Is it worthwhile to accept the trade-offs of raising money? Because I'm also a solo founder, so I own 100% of Delivery Layer. And I think it is a little bit easier sometimes when you've got a group of founders that come together, because nobody really has full control. You're always operating with less than full control. But right now, as a solo bootstrap founder, there's a lot of freedom to that. And so at that point, at that stage, will it make sense to raise money to accelerate growth or not? I'm not there yet, so I don't know the answer. That's when I would think about raising money. To your second question, where do you see Delivery Layer going in the long run? I feel like it has the potential to be a really big business. I'm also less, and I think this ties into the fact that I'm bootstrapped, I'm less tied to a software only vision, because a lot of my customers actually need a little bit of professional services also as they grow up, and or as these applications are supported. And I see this as a sustainable real business, as opposed to trying to race to 100 million in revenue, and either you have like landed on every single good step along that, very narrow bridge, or not. So, to me, when I think about the business leaders who I really look up to, or that I like, when I grew up, I saw people in my community or whatever who were successful. It was the people who had run businesses for 40, 50 years and had built it over that time period to be, medium to large. And I don't know what the end state is for Delivery Layer. I think it could be really big. I think it could be medium. Either way is a good outcome for me, as long as I can sell enough to keep it stable and get it. I think the next milestone for me is getting to $1 million in ARR. And so once I'm there, Delivery Layer is stable, and growth is just, everything is extra. So that's but I don't think it's particularly constrained, but I also don't think it's I don't think there's there's many people that do similar things. I don't think they do them as well, and I think Delivery Layer takes a very specific approach that is far better than everyone else in the market. And I know we're a minute over here. Are you good for time for this story?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the best things that shifted my thinking early on was there was another data leader who I know who has built a bunch of embedded BI type of applications, which is what I think, Delivery Layer does a lot better than those. And his feedback was, you have this unique experience of leading a data business at scale that almost nobody, and building data products at scale that almost no one else has. Forget this product, just go be a consultant, and you can make a ridiculous amount of money helping people with this, because embedded applications are not great, but they're fine. Who cares? Why are you trying to do this? And I thought he was wrong. I thought that Delivery Layer could be a lot better, but I, instead of just reflexively saying no to that, I instead thought to myself, what actually if he's right? What if companies don't what if it's not as differentiated as I think it is? What would that mean? And to me, what that meant was the thing that mattered a lot more was brand and the focus on these very specific types of applications. And so even if it is a less differentiated market than I thought, I don't think that's true, but assuming that it is. And it really freed me, because what it meant was, who cares if there's other solutions that are similar? If I can do an amazing job executing, if I can give people exactly what they want at a price that makes sense for them, then we're good. and you could build a real sustainable business on that. And maybe that business doesn't, maybe it doesn't sprint to 100 million like you need to in certain business models,
Mm.
or for certain sort of VC expectations.
Yep.
But if it gets there in 20 years versus in 10 years, I am personally going to still be very happy and enjoy the ride. So that's how I think about long-term growth. It's if I can stay committed to this problem and helping customers and continuing to have happy customers who, when they show their customers their new applications, they make more money, then that can be a sustainable business.
I love it. That's fantastic. I love that answer. Ready for the rapid fire 5?
Bring it on. Bring it on.
All right, here we go. Question number 1. What motivates you?
Yeah, I don't have a great answer. I've always been pretty motivated. I've got family. I want to be successful, but I don't have. You sent this one to me, so I knew in advance you were going to ask it, but I don't have a great answer to it.
It's a great answer to me. Intrinsic motivation. I love it. Name a goal, a big goal you have right now, and when would you like to accomplish it?
Yeah, the big next one because Delivery Layer has gone from 0 to 1 from revenue. The next milestone is $1 million in ARR, and I want to hit that soon.
The second part of that is when. Do you want to quantify soon?
I mean, some of the deals that are in my pipeline are pretty big. So we'll see how they turn out.
I'm going to hit you up on offline to follow up on when those actually closed. When you got to tell me privately when you hit it. What's your most preferred way to learn new information to stay sharp?
Yeah, great question. And this is so relevant because data people need to learn like a ridiculous amount of things very quickly. Salespeople also to a certain extent because you get thrown into new industries all the time. I'm a maximalist when it comes to this. I do everything. So I will listen to podcasts. This is how I think we got connected. I followed you on LinkedIn and started listening to your podcast. I will buy courses. I will like reach out to people on LinkedIn to talk to them. I will read books. I do everything. And then in between all of those different things, when you're sort of immersing yourself in a new skill and then actually you're doing it and seeing what works and doesn't work in your real life, you get better at it as quickly as you can. I don't think there's a fast, not that it's always fast. And like with my sales skills, for example, there are situations that I just haven't been in yet. And so there's, it's like, oh, I finally got past this stage. Now I have to deal with procurement teams. It's like, okay, like it's great, but like that deal might not work out because of, I still got a lot to learn about procurement teams. So that's an example, but yeah, that's how I learn.
You should see my my podcast search list. It's nothing but marketplaces. So I'm with you there. I've been listening to a lot of Sarah Larry from Nextdoor, which is just phenomenal. Okay, here comes my new favorite question that I've been asking folks. I'm going to actually even show you have this in the list because I forgot to change it in the automated email. So this might be a little bit of a curveball, but I'm sure you'll be able to handle it just fine. Who's your favorite character of all time?
My favorite character. Gosh.
Could be in anything. Movie, TV, could be the guy down the street, a woman down the street.
My favorite, I think you'd probably want like some sort of popular character, or no. I mean,
just if it's not popular, explain the context. That's all. Somebody mentioned their mom, for instance.
Yeah, like,
Let me tell you mine while you're thinking.
Yeah, no. I defaulted to my dad, who has just been sort of like business person out hustling for his career, and he's had a really sort of interesting experience in the business world. My dad or my grandfather, who also was an interesting guy. I was lucky. I was close with my family, and still am close with my family. So I'll go with that.
I love it. I love it. I love it. What's your favorite thing to do when you aren't working?
I've got kids. I got a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. So it's all kids time when I'm not working, which is not that much.
We it's funny. We are a lot alike. I'm right ahead of you. I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. So
Okay.
yeah.
That's
So
great.
same deal. Lots of I mean, literally what you just said is I resonate with that. Um, perfectly, right? Lots of sports, pizza night, you name it. So it's fun, really, really fun. All right, let me pull up the bonus question from. Oh, this is you might not actually be able to answer this. The anticipatory question was posed to someone who was running a sales team. So the question was, what challenges do you face running a sales team? But you know what? Let's not do that one. Let me repeat one.
I run a sales team of one, so it's you can
Well,
change
you
the
know what?
question if you want. You didn't
Well,
ask me
actually, you know what? Let's,
how many hours I sleep for. So
well,
that's
yeah. Let me. Yeah, yeah. I'll go back to I'll go back to that one. How many hours of sleep do you get per night?
I need sleep. I'm a 7 or 8 hour a night sleeper, and if I don't sleep, I just can't work effectively the next day.
I need sleep theoretically because I know it's good for you, but for some reason I can't get past like 5 or 6 hours of sleep, no matter how hard I try. Um,
I've got a friend who was able to function on 4 hours of sleep and just like couldn't really sleep more, and he
yeah,
got a lot of work done. I'm envious. I
I know.
can't I can't do that.
Yeah, yeah. I find days that I have a Nayoya acupuncture mat that if I do that and lie on that for like 30 minutes or something close to bedtime, it helps. I get into a deep sleep and actually have dreams and that type of stuff. But even then, I'm bordering on 6 hours. So, anyways, and I don't drink coffee. Solomon, one last question, then we'll get you out of here. Find out how people can reach out to you and talk about, learn more about Delivery Layer. What question do you have for me to ask my next guest?
Oh, all right. Well, let's say that they are uh, another founder doing founder-led sales,
Okay.
right? My biggest question is what did they do in the jump from like the 100K to $1 million ARR? How did they navigate that, and what were some of the things that they did differently? So that's my
I
that's
love it.
my question.
Oh, it's perfect. How did they navigate the jump from 100K to $1 million, and what were some of the things that they did differently? I'm
If
curious.
any. I don't know
Yeah,
if there are any things I'm not necessarily doing anything different. I'm just continuing to do more. So I don't know if there is a good answer to that, but if there is, I'd like to hear it.
awesome, fantastic. I think the next episode might be a go-to-market leader, but only
So
for
then ask them the CRO question,
yeah. There you
and
go.
then
Okay,
save this for the next one.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Solomon, how can people reach out to you to say thank you? Perhaps maybe ask you a question that I didn't ask, and to learn more about Delivery Layer.
Yeah, find me on Delivery Layer is deliverylayer.com, but find me on LinkedIn. If you're a salesperson who needs to get some sort of analytics application to your customers in order for them to continue to pay you, then let me know. And yeah, I'm very out and about on LinkedIn, so it's easy to find me there.
Fantastic. And of course, we'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Solomon Khan, thank you for doing the Goats of Growth.
Jay, thank you for inviting me.
Goodbye, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review, and tell a colleague, friend, neighbor, anybody who would be listening, who would be interested in listening to this, and find value in what we're talking about here. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.